Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Spill the Tea. I'm your host, Keisha Savory, and I am joined today right next to me, my co-host,
Nicole Gurley. Hello.
Yes, and today I always say that it's a great one, but this is an extra special one because we don't always get the inside look of things. So we decided to try and dig a little deeper for you guys and get some information that will help you out, especially if you're thinking about some of our higher level schools. And so we are joined by Elena Patrick. Did I get it right?
Pathak.
Patrick
Close enough.
from Harvard's interview crew. I'm just going to say it like that. She's going to give us her intro and let us know who she is. So take it away, girl.
All right. I'm Elena Pathak. I'm one of the local Central Florida Harvard College interviewers. I've been interviewing, I think, more than 10 years now for the school. I had worked formerly in the Graduate School of Design, Harvard University's Graduate School of Design. I worked in their admission office for several years, at least 3 years. So that was quite an eye-opening experience. So I've seen a lot of essays and test scores and sort of, being on that side of the fence, but also as an applicant, like many of your students applying for school, it's a grueling process, but I've kind of been on many sides of the fence. So it kind of gives me a little insight. I was also a lead faculty member at the Boston Architectural College for many years. So also worked in somewhat of the admission process, being a lead faculty member as well. So it kind of gives me another look at the admissions process. But I do enjoy the local interviewing. That's something I find very near and dear. And I especially love the enthusiasm of the students. There's so much promise and so much for them to look forward to, and that motivates me a lot in just my job and the day to day. I really love it, really enjoy it.
I'm sure you love the weather compared to Boston down here in Florida too. Was that any help? Did that help at all?
It's definitely. I mean, I was actually born and raised in Orlando, so that's actually very much home for me. But so Boston was definitely a little bit of a shock, being somewhere very cold. But it was temporary. I did stay. I guess I didn't get enough of the cold, so I stayed after postgraduate work and stayed there longer. But no, it's fun, and it's nice to experience something different. That's always good, I think, too.
That's cool. Yeah. So tell me, how does one come from being a student at Harvard to becoming an interviewer? How does that happen?
The Central Florida, so basically Harvard would not have the capacity to interview all their applicants, and they like to interview, if they can, all of their applicants, which I applaud them for doing, because I think it's a good experience for the students, whether they, because a lot of times the applicants will interview at multiple places. So I think it's just a great experience for them no matter what. But the Central Florida Harvard Club, basically the Harvard Club of Central Florida, they are the ones responsible for interviewing the Central Florida applicants. And there are many of them, hundreds of applicants that we need to interview. So there are multiple interviewers. I'm not by any means the only one. I'm just one of many. And in order to be an interviewer, you have to be a graduate from any of the graduate schools or the college. There are some graduates that went to the college and graduate school at Harvard, but you have to be a Harvard alum, essentially, to become an interviewer.
Is that at all schools then, do you know, or is that just how Harvard does it?
I'm not sure. I know that's what Harvard does. And students also can technically apply. They can technically interview with the college directly. A lot of students don't know that. Some do. Some elect to do that. But normally we get assigned by the gentleman that's head of the college process, the interviewing process. He basically assigns us students. So it's somewhat random. We don't know who we're going to interview. and they're all over, and private, public, homeschool students. But we're assigned, and of course, if we happen to know the applicant, we would decline. We would, we like to keep it. We don't want to interview someone we know. It's usually not, that wouldn't be good. That wouldn't be ethical. So
It may be good. Maybe good for the kid. I don't know.
Yeah. So what is the actual purpose then of the interview?
I like to think that it's a great way for the school to know the applicant on another level. I know sometimes when students apply for admission, they, in their essay, sometimes let's say they focus on one thing, and the school doesn't really have a good idea of the, I guess, more about this applicant. So I think it's awesome because as an interviewer, we don't have access to their scores or their grades or their application materials. So I like to think of it as sort of a fresh start. Let's say they didn't have a strong score or something, but they're just an amazing interviewer or interviewee, then it really kind of gives them another shot at it, I think. So they may have an incredible personality, or they're just, they didn't really play up something in their application that's really extraordinary. It really gives them another chance to really dive into that and talk about it and really be heard on another level. Because I also help students, I probably should mention this, with their application material, just friends or family or whatever. I volunteered, of course, at Boone, helping some of the students. And a lot of the times, they in the essay, it's almost a little too focused. And it's really a way to get to know the students, because sometimes, in their application materials at the very end of the day, you have limited information on what could be an extraordinary applicant. Mm-hmm. So it's another way to really get to know them. We do a full report on the students. We have standardized full reports. So I applaud the university for really taking their time to understanding these applicants, because most of the applicants that apply to Harvard are extraordinary. It's a shame that more don't get in. Mm-hmm. So if you've worked that hard in your life and you are really an extraordinary student, which I assume if you apply to Harvard, I always assume that you are, as an applicant, then I feel like you should be heard. You should be understood, you should be heard. And I applaud that the university takes that time to really go in depth with these interviews.
So you said that Harvard tries to interview all, but is it true then that if you're not chosen for an interview, that it's just logistics that it didn't happen, or do you only interview like the best candidates, or what does that look like?
I'm not sure if I don't know. I wouldn't go as far as to say that they interview the best candidates, but I would imagine they would. I can't really speak for the university, and I don't assign, but usually if they're deeply considering someone for admission, they really are aggressive. They want them interviewed.
Okay.
Because sometimes I've had a hard time tracking down students. Sometimes they move or they change cell phones, and we don't have current information. We're literally trying to locate a student to interview them.
Wow.
And we can't find them. And I know the school they go to, but I've actually had to call a school and talk to a guidance counselor, say, look, Harvard wants to interview a student. I need to find this student. Mm-hmm. You need to help me find them. Here's my number. Please have them call me, please. And then, and in that one particular case, that student was admitted. So, but I had to really go the extraordinary effort to find them. But I feel we owe that to them, and yeah, maybe they didn't have their information up to date, but I feel everybody should have a shot, they in their due time, to interview.
They may not have recognized your number and thought you were calling about a warranty or something. Yeah. You never know. You got to give them a break.
There's no telling, but we make every effort. We email, we call every number we have. And we really do make an effort. And then sometimes, some years, we just have an incredible amount of applicants, more like I would say in the last, especially last year, because, with the waiver of the test scores, we of course had more applicants. So, and so what that does is we have an incredible amount of applicants, and sometimes there's only so many interviewers, right?
Mhm.
So if you think of, and in the past, the interviews were face to face, of course. So if you imagine, if you're living somewhere in rural America, I don't know, that could get interesting too. But I know Harvard, Central Florida, we do try to interview as many applicants as possible.
Mhm. Which is great, because I have heard from other schools that they just don't have the capacity to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, with so many applicants. So a lot of the other schools then were saying to the students, it's okay if you're not interviewed, it doesn't mean anything. It just means we didn't have somebody in the area to do it. Time wise, we didn't have enough. So to not worry about it if you don't get chosen for one.
Right. And we don't get paid. We do this. It's volunteer work. It's
wow.
For the community. So, sometimes the call goes out to us and they say, we have an extraordinary amount of applicants. Yeah, you may normally interview this many. Can you take on more? And we do. Some of us, we do as we can. And what a lot of people don't realize is with the January 1st deadline, we start interviewing as soon as the applications are coming in. So so let's say, January 1st is the deadline, which it's been for forever, as long as I know. And you apply early, then we will immediately start interviewing. So, and what a lot of people don't realize is it's always around the holidays. So for a lot of interviewers, that gets a lot of, it just makes it a little more interesting, because you're gearing up for the holidays and New Year's and Christmas and Hanukkah and whatever else. And you have all these applicants to interview on top of that. So, but we do make a concerted effort to really try to interview as many as possible.
Yeah. So how does this process go? The kid submits their application and everything, and then what happens from there before it gets to you, and then what happens after that?
I'm not sure directly with the college, but I can talk from my experience working in the admissions office. Usually the applications are processed, right? Like any school, and making sure they're complete, that all your materials are in. And then like I said, it gets the college, it's all basically computerized, right? So our interviewer coordinator, I'm sure gets pinged essentially for these are the applicants that are ready to be interviewed, and then he assigns them according to some interviewers. We basically take on a load that we're able to handle. So like, for instance, I have a family, I have kids and a career, and I don't like to take more than 2 applicants at a time to interview. So usually from start to finish, by the time I get pinged, contact the interviewee, then by the time I set up an interview and do my report, because I personally like to take a lot of time on the reports. I don't want to rush through it. I feel like, again, those applicants work very hard. I was one of those applicants many times, and I feel like it's my duty to give them the time that they deserve. So I'm not going to rush through a report. I would say for me, about an hour to 2 a piece to really write a good full report on these students. And so I like to take 2 at a time. So some interviewers might take 10 at a time. I'd say that's extreme, but maybe, they might take 5, because sometimes it takes longer to find, locate the applicants and set up the interviews. But, and then once we submit our report, then pretty much quick after that, we get assigned more. But we decide how many we can take on at a time until, they're all interviewed, as many as we can.
And so do you submit notes, and then after that, is that like a really important part of this whole process for the kid to get accepted? So basically, if you say, yeah, take this kid, is that it, or what happens? So
we do. I like to think of myself as a reporter.
Okay.
I like to report. I like to report facts. Maybe that's the way to look at it. And I do my report as I see it, and then I leave it up to the school to decide, because it's their decision. And you have to remember that I'm only one piece, right? So I do my report, and then the university has the scores and the resume, their essays, their grades. So they're seeing a more complete picture. I'm just one piece. So if I were to recommend a student for admission, or not recommend a student for various reasons, I don't know, then I'm not final word or say. It's just a piece of the puzzle. And if there's a student that they're like really eager to admit, let's just say, I'm sure that once my interview report comes in, and then that's either going to confirm what they're already assuming, or there might be something in it that brings up a concern. I don't know. But ultimately I am not the decision maker. I feel like I'm more of a reporter.
Well, that's great that you don't know anything about the kid coming in. So what does the actual interview look like then? So what should the kid wear? How long is it? What does the interview actually look like?
We usually like to give them an hour for the interview. I've had 2-hour interviews sometimes. Sometimes we get applicants that are just, they have a lot going on, and I just, when you've been interviewing long enough, when you've heard everything that they want to talk about, and if it takes 2 hours, I believe they should be heard. I really believe they should be heard. They should have their time, and I don't like to rush them. I like them to feel that everything they had to say was heard, because I think that listening is really important. This interview is not about me. It's about them and what they would like the university to know. And so we like to say give an hour, but again, each one is different. It's really
different.
You
go in with your list of questions then? So you go in with a list of questions and then kind of write down answers as they go?
Some interviewers can, but they don't, it's not required or anything. Every once in a while, I love it when students come with a resume or a list of their activities or achievements, just because sometimes when we have an interview and then I have to do my report, it could be a couple days. I like to make notes during my interviews so I don't miss something, because something may be really important to a student and I don't want to report something that's not correct, and I like to make notes so that I can make sure that I include these really cool things, in my reports. It's important. These students have worked hard their whole lives. I don't want to miss something that was extraordinary. And a lot of times we have a lot to talk about. I don't have a note taker with me. So, I have to make sure that I get all this across. So I find it really helpful when they bring a resume, because when I go to my report, it is incredible to have that, but it's absolutely not required. They are not required to bring anything. There's no requirements for the interview.
But do you have your list of questions then? Do you come to the table with questions that Harvard has given you to ask? Or is the conversation just kind of go?
I do not. I really like to just allow these students to express themselves, be themselves, talk about what they'd like to talk about and focus on. One of the things I do like is, and I'd like to say, is that if you go in with the assumption that everybody that's applied is a very good applicant, they've got great grades, they've got great scores, they've worked hard their whole life, they're involved in a lot of things. What I like to focus on are what I call distinguishers. What distinguishes you from everybody else that applies that has great grades, great scores, everything else. Like what makes you unique? What makes you, how do you distinguish yourself from everybody else? And so I think that if you really focus on that, you might be onto something. You could be the world's best bagpipe player, and that's like, wow, okay, you could be a top 3% rower in the world, and you're like, okay, that's cool, that's amazing. There's all these, but you don't always have to be the top this or the top that. We have students that have extraordinary life circumstances and stories, and so every single applicant is so different, and I've seen it all, and I just feel everybody has a story, and it's nice to hear what that is, I think. You'd asked about what to wear. This is a very debated topic, maybe.
I would suggest that they don't wear a Yale shirt. I don't know about you.
Yes.
Business casual, I've heard.
That's a good idea. So I actually, and this is not coming from the university. The university makes no comment on what to wear. I will like to preface that. This is from me as a person that has been through this process, so this is coming from being, a student that has applied multiple times. I would like to say that I like to think that this might be the most important job interview of your life. And if it's the most important job interview of your life because you get into Harvard and you have a Harvard degree, and that might be life-changing for you, or you get into Yale, same thing, then I think that it's always good to show that you care, show that you really want it, show that this is the most important job interview of your life. So I'll tell you a story. I had an interviewee that showed up in jeans and a t-shirt. And I think as a mom and as a person being in her shoes at some point, I felt like I owed it to her to point that out. Not that it changed whether she got in or not, I don't know, but I just said, look, I noticed you're a little casual today. And and this was at the end because I didn't want her to feel like it reflected the university. And I said, this is for me. And she said, yeah, I had a Yale interview and I was all dressed up. And I came to the interviewer and the interviewer said, this is just a casual conversation. You're all dressed up. You didn't really need to do that. So she said, so I just figured for the next one, I would just be casual. I said, well, he noticed that you were dressed up. Likewise, I noticed you were dressed down. I said, so you have a choice to be remembered dressing up or dressing down. But I don't know about you, but for the most important interview in my life, potentially of your life, I'd probably want to be dressed up.
Right.
I said, because I noticed likewise, And so of course her eyes got real big and I said, I'm just pointing that out because I said, I have a feeling you're going to have more interviews and you have a say so in this. This is your interview. You take control of your interview and you come as you feel you should. So I just wanted to give that advice just so that she, came ready and prepared. I will say this is again not reflective of the university's opinions, but I do help a lot of students, like I said, get into good colleges. And I always recommend they come in their best, the boys or whatever, they come in their best suit, not an old bar mitzvah suit, the sleeves are too short. I said, make sure it fits and it fits well and you feel good in it, but ultimately wear what you feel good in. Because you got to feel good in that interview, just like a job interview.
Right.
And I said, a lot of times it reflects you care. So the students that I have helped and I prepare for interviews, they go in prepared and they feel good and they get in, and I'm not saying that you don't, if you come in jeans and a t-shirt, every interviewer is different.
Right.
You might be insulted by that. But I told a girl in jeans and a t-shirt that I would never insult her and her hard work and all that she's done in her life by showing up to her interview in a jeans and a t-shirt.
Right.
I would not do that as an interviewer.
Right.
Yeah.
Come dressed up for the occasion because I like to respect them, and show that I care about them and their future.
That's great.
So,
Okay. So then is there anything so we talked about a student should focus on like themselves and distinguishing themselves from others. Is there something students should really stay away from or not talk about, or is it just kind of an open conversation, open table?
I think it's really an open table. I think that there is some level of being humble in an interview. And, I've interviewed students that have not been humble. I've interviewed students that I think that they think they know more than you. That might be true. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
we know those
come
kids.
across.
Indeed. We've talked to them.
I'm sure you do. And are you coming to school because you want to learn? Do you know everything and you don't need to come to school? Right? They can ask themselves that question. I will tell you another story. My days working in the admissions office, I was sitting in, there was some reviewers, and one of the things that I do caution students, for instance, when they're doing their essays, is don't attempt to define something for somebody, right? Because your views may not align with somebody else's. You could say, I feel this, But if you say architecture is the study of this, you're just now telling them what it is versus saying, I believe the study of architecture is this. There's a very different tone in that, right?
Mhm.
So that again, I think you had to watch, you know, if you want to tell someone or attempt to define something for an interviewer. For instance, I did a mock interview with a Boone student, and he was trying to tell me all about Haiti. And it was a mock interview. We were having a lot of fun with it. And he was going on and on and on about Haiti. And what he didn't realize, because I kind of threw him a curveball, was that, you know, I have a charity that helps Haiti. I have a Haitian brother from another mother, and I know a lot about Haiti. And he had no idea that the person sitting across from him might have known more than he did about Haiti.
Right.
So you just don't know, you know, what your interviewer, where their walk of life, their background, their hardship, you know. So I'm not saying be careful. I'm just saying, you know, don't forget. And so I always recommend you come to your interview with a list of questions for your interviewer, even if you or if there's a lull in the interview, like all of a sudden there's that quiet space, you're not sure what to ask the interviewer a question and keep it going. You know,
Right.
I do recommend that. Some interviewers might be better at interviewing than others. I don't know. You know, I'm used to keeping the conversation going because I've interviewed enough students. But I can tell you, working in the admissions office once, there was a reviewer. It was a landscape architecture applicant. And I don't know this applicant or anything, but I just know that this applicant had attempted to define landscape architecture in the essay. And that interviewer, that reviewer was like, well, if you know all about landscape architecture, you don't need to come here. And I saw her chuck that file across the room.
Oh my gosh.
She was so angry. Okay. So, you know, so that was, and I thought it was the funniest thing. It was kind of funny, but it was like, wow, okay. She was definitely insulted. Somebody that's applying to landscape architecture felt they knew more about landscape architecture than their reviewer. So I don't think that student got in. I would guess. But no, I just think it's good to be yourself in the interviews, and it's really a nice conversation to have. And you know, we've done enough interviewing. Usually, we know if they're nervous, and sometimes I like to throw in fun questions just so they can really be themselves. You know, and get past the nerves a little bit sometimes. So.
Oh, some examples of
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
You hit some stuff that we really wanted to hear, because a lot of students, they'll come to us and we can only give them tidbits here and there, but coming from someone that's right there with them, it was great to even hear the stories, because it teaches us as well as we're working with them. I will remind any kids that's doing anything with lawns and maintenance or anything like that, just hold back on the definitions, buddy. Just, it's gonna get chucked across the room, so just hold back on that. But you know, we're coming to the end. We didn't want to keep you too long, and again, we want to thank you, because for those of you that are watching, we pulled this poor woman out into her car to do an interview with us, and I'm just so grateful that you made the time to be with us. Anything else you'd like to add to help out the kids?
The last thing I would love to add, because with a lot of students that I've worked with in the past with their college applications, a lot of students have this this view that they can't afford to go, that they can't afford to go to college, they can't afford to go to Harvard, they can't apply, and I always find that a shame, because, you know, number one, you don't know till you apply, and that's with a lot of schools, and I'm sure you guys know that. You know, yes. A lot of times you don't know your individual situation, and you don't know till you're accepted, you know, how much financial aid you're going to get, if you get a full ride, you just don't know. But with Harvard, and a lot more schools have followed suit, you know, if your parental income, and don't quote me on this because I can't remember, but it's like, I don't know if it's 150,000 or less. If your combined parental income is like 150,000 or less or something, you know, I believe you get a free ride. I believe that, you know, they have a big endowment to cover your tuition. So, and I think they did that because they didn't want students to not apply because they felt they couldn't afford it. They want the best and they want the brightest. So they wanted to increase their applicant pool to get the best and brightest. And so what if you can't afford it? You're going to get in, you're going to get it paid for. And I applaud the university for doing that, because it wasn't like that when I went to school. But I I really just want to encourage that students apply to schools, whether it's Harvard, Yale, state schools, whatever. Apply to the schools you want to apply to and let the rest of it take its course, because you just don't know till you apply. You know, you really don't. And then the last thing that I would like to mention is that, you know, it's very hard to get into Harvard. You know, it's a very small, you know, they let about like, I don't know, around 2,000 a year. So you do the math. With a school like Harvard, there's a lot of US centric thought. You know, when we live in the US and we grow up in the US, when you think about the applicants, you think, oh, you know, they're all from the United States, but a school like Harvard is actually a global school. So you're actually competing with kids around the world.
Right.
And I wanted to stress that, because a lot of kids, you know, they have their hearts set on Harvard and they dream about going to Harvard, and it's just so hard to get in. And it's not that they're not good applicants and that they shouldn't be there. It's just that there are just an incredible amount of applications that come in, and they're from all over the world, people with all types of walks in life. And so, you know, that's, and usually when I say that to applicants, you know, even in interviews, when they ask about that, usually you can tell they all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, I hadn't really thought about that. You know, there's students from all over the world, and especially you see that a lot in the graduate schools there. There's an incredible amount of international students, which is what I think makes it so much fun, is learning from other people, you know. But I think that sometimes they lose sight of that. So I just, you know, think it's good to apply and then let it take its course, and don't be afraid to apply because you're worried about the financial piece. Because I see that a lot. I see it a lot from perfectly good applicants that could apply and have a shot at getting in, and they're like, oh, I can't afford it, you know. Used to hear that for years, and now I'm glad that the school has sort of made some changes to really, you know, and it's not that they probably didn't get financially in the past, but it sure does make it a little bit more palatable, right?
Yes.
And more schools have done that. So yeah.
Thank you for saying that,
Yeah.
because we do deal with that all the time. For those of you that are watching, this is the time where we hear about kids who applied through QuestBridge, and you know, they think that's the only way, and it really isn't. You know, obviously Harvard isn't on QuestBridge, but they're looking at all these top schools, and they don't think they can get in any other way. They can't go unless they get this scholarship, but they don't realize the things that you're saying. So thank you very much for bringing that up.
Can I make two more points?
Sure.
They're good ones. Number one, you can apply for a transfer, right? You can apply for a transfer. A lot of people don't know that. So if Harvard is your dream, and I think a lot of other schools, good schools do too, allow transfers. They just don't advertise it. It's not well known. Yeah. If it's your dream, keep following it. I would recommend you go to the best school you can, and then try transferring it.
Right.
And do that. Because I don't know that there's a lot of transfer applicants, because I don't know that a lot know that they can do that. Mm-hmm. Some students go to another school and they get comfortable there, and they think, oh, I'll transfer, but they don't. So that is another, you know, way to look at it. What was the second thing I was going to say?
Don't go to Yale.
What's that?
Just kidding. I said don't go to Yale. I mean,
I've had students tell me in interviews that their first choice was Yale at a Harvard interview. Don't know that they probably need to say that, but I don't take offense to it. I let Harvard decide if they're offended by that. I don't know. But I've had many students tell me that my first choice is not Harvard.
Like, oh, bye, kid.
or talk about another school, that they're real excited about going to. And well, why are we here?
Right.
But again, I've seen it all. So,
well, thank you so much for joining us from Arkansas. I know. Yes, thank you so much. Even though you are usually out here in Orlando, it was great talking to you and being able to hear all the ins.
Yes.
Yeah. Glad to help. Happy to. And hopefully this will help some other applicants in their interview process.
Definitely. And if you guys need to rewind so that you can catch everything that was said, it's on our YouTube channel. And if you like what you see, go ahead and like us so we can keep more stuff like this going and get some more behind the scenes details, whether it's Harvard or Yale or any of the other schools. But we really appreciate you, Elena. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.